Hello and welcome back. In this video we're going to talk about variables. First, I'm going to make sure that our XAMPP servers are running, so go ahead and open up your manager and go click on Manage Servers and make sure these are all green and hit Start All. Alright, once you've done that, go ahead and navigate to localhost.php in a browser and you should come to the home page and you can click on Echo and see what we looked at last video. Go ahead and refresh your memory on how Echo works. Remember, Echo is to print something to the screen. So we're going to talk about a new concept today, and it's going to be the concept we're talking about today is going to be variables. So what is a variable? Well, simply put, a variable is something that we use in programming to put something in. I want you to think of it that way. Think of it like a box that you could put almost anything in a box, okay? And then you can label that box, and then later you can access that box to get what you put in there back. So the way it works on a computer is you are going to put something into memory. And what a variable does is it stuffs that thing into memory and it labels that block of memory with your variable name that you give it, and then later when you need to get that back or use it, you can just access it with the variable name. So it might be easier just to show you, but think of it as something that stores something in memory so you can use it later on in your scripts. Okay, so let's go ahead and in the if you look in the project files here, inside of the scripts directory, go ahead and create a new file. So right click on scripts and create a new file and call this one variables.php. Okay, so we have our blank string here now, and so what we're going to do is open up our PHP tags, skip down a few lines, and we'll go ahead and close our PHP tags. Okay, so everything that we do is done right in here. So the way it works is a variable begins with a dollar sign, okay, and that is right above your 4 on your number pad. So you hit Shift 4 and that's a dollar sign, and then what you can do is give it a name. So let's call this one first underscore name. Okay, now this is how you set up a variable. Now what we have to do to put something in there is we put a space and we put equals and another space, and then we can store a lot of different things in PHP in there. You can store a string. So we talked about strings in the last video, which a string is a data type that is simply just characters, okay? So let's store my first name here, which is Curtis, okay? And then we have to use our semicolon. So now we have a variable set up that in memory called first name. And then inside of that memory, it's storing the string of Curtis. Variables can store lots of data types. For example, I could create another variable called age, and I can put equals, and without putting strings, I can simply just put the number 38 and a semicolon. Now what this is actually an integer. A number without a decimal is called an integer, so it's a data type of an integer. And you can see that this is actually a different color than the green things here, so it shows you by syntax highlighting that Curtis is a string and this is an integer. So we can do first name, age. We could store other things in these as well. We can store what's called a Boolean. Okay, so you could do married equals, and then instead of putting quotes or a number or anything, you can simply say true or false. Okay, and this data type, you can see it's a little bit different color of a green than this string, but this data type is called a Boolean. Okay, so I am married, so I'm going to put that as true. And then also you can do has children, true. And then I can do another one that said number of children equals 3. Okay, so this right off the bat really doesn't do much for us other than it's storing this stuff in memory on our computer that I can later use in my PH script to do other things with. So you can imagine with websites, originally websites were static, but with having a server being able to process and make decisions, you could actually show people a website that was dynamic, and it was, you know, if they were a member of your site, it might say hello Curtis at the top. And the way it would do that is the HTML would say hello, and then it would echo out first name. So let's do that. On another line here, let's go ahead and do something called echo. Now, we did this in the last video, so you can echo out, and instead of us typing first name here, we can actually echo out a variable. So we can actually echo out first name. Now there's some variable, because a variable can store many different things, echo can't echo out every type data type, but it's not going to have a problem echoing out strings or integers. So those are fine. It's not going to do well with Booleans. Don't try to echo those out. I'll show you a way to print those as screen in an upcoming video. But if now we go to our browser and we navigate to PHP, which is the name of our directory, and I'm going to say scripts, and we call this variables.php. If I hit enter, you can see that the only thing on the screen is Curtis. And that is because we only echoed one thing. We echoed Curtis. Now, what we could do, I kind of want to show you guys one thing that we haven't talked about yet, and that's comments. A comment is a piece of text that you can put inside of your code to help you remember something, or to communicate to other developers who may be reading your code in the future. There are many different reasons to comment, but the thing is a comment is text that when the PHP parser gets to it and it gets to this line, say it's a comment, it'll skip over the comment and move on to the next line. So the way that we do a comment is we do 2 forward slashes and then we just type our comment. So we could put this variable is holding a string. Okay? And then we can skip down a few lines and we can say this variable is holding an integer. Okay? And we can say this variable is holding a Boolean. Now these aren't really comments that we normally put in your PHP files. I'm just teaching you how to do comments right now and putting a few comments here so that we can remember this in the future, like what data types they are. Maybe we'll do a different video on data types, but actually I don't really think we need to, and just like we don't need to do a video on commenting. Okay, comments are just lines that start with 2 forward slashes, and when PHP parser gets to this line, it's going to see those and it's going to say, oh, skip down to the next line, and it's going to instantly move to this line here. Okay? The difference with comments is we don't need to put semicolons at the end of them either. If we were going to do multi-line comments, we could do another set like this, and we could say comment, and so we can do many lines in a row, and I'll skip all of them. Atom has a pretty cool shortcut that if you highlight a couple lines and you hit Control /, it'll uncomment, it'll toggle comments back on and off for those lines. So you can actually make comments like that. Or you could do things like, if I was echoing age here, and I went to the front end, and it says 38, and then for debugging purposes I may not want to echo this, but I don't want to delete that code. You could simply comment that code out, and then when you go to the browser, it's not going to run that line of code. And then later when you're ready to have it run again, you can actually uncomment it. So that's a useful thing you can do with commenting as well. It's just to comment out code so that it doesn't run a few lines while you're trying to debug something. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this echo, but I'm going to show you something we can do with PHP and these variables. So let's just, outside of our PHP tags now, we'll go down a few lines and we're going to put a paragraph tag. And what we're going to do is we're going to type, let's see, we'll type, open up PHP tags and type echo first name. Okay, close your PHP tags and then type is, and then do another space, and then open up your PHP tags and type echo and age, and then close them. Type years old. And then what we're going to do is, well, that's all we're going to do for now, okay, because I don't want to get into if statements or anything yet to show if he's married or whatever, but just know that you can do that, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And if we go back to our browser, now it says Curtis is 38 years old. If I would go back here to these variables and I would change this to say 24 and refresh the page, now it says Curtis is 24 years old. So you see I'm not changing any of this. The values inside the variables are just changing. Okay, so I can do 24 and I can say, instead of Curtis, I could say, I don't know, Cindy. So Cindy is 24 years old. Okay, so that's one of the things that we can do with variables. You're going to find yourself using variables over and over and over while you're programming. And that's why this is a basic concept. It's a concept of storing something in memory that we can use later on in our script. Okay, and just remember that you can store, in PHP you can store almost anything in memory and then use it later on. We're going to be storing objects and something called arrays, which we'll get to later. But yeah, a variable is just that. It's just a way to label a piece of memory that has something stored in it. Now, a variable can also change. For example, if I come down here, I can do a little bit of math, and I can say age is equal to age plus 100. So what this does, don't let this confuse you, but what we're doing is we're going to reset this piece, so it goes down, it goes from top to bottom. So it sets a piece of memory, says that age is 24. Later it's going to get down to this line of code and it's going to say, wait a minute, age is equal to whatever's in age plus 100. So now if I go back to the browser and refresh, this should say Cindy is 124 years old. Okay, and so you can do math. You can also do really any type of math here, because this is an integer. I can do divided by 6. So now it should say Cindy is 4 years old. Okay, so the thing about a variable, other than storing stuff in, is a variable is just that. Like if you remember in math, a variable is something that can change. So you can change the values throughout your script and manipulate those values with your script as you go. So that's the other thing to remember about variables, is they can change. There's one more way to store things, and that's called a constant. So if you remember in maybe your math class you learned a constant and a variable, or maybe in science or something you learned constants and variables. And constants are things that don't change. Variables are things that do change. And so you can actually set up constants in the exact same way. And so to set up a constant, though, you have to do something that kind of looks like this. You say define, and then you put these here, and then I'm going to just do all caps age, and then I'm going to say 54. Okay, and then what I'll do, just to make this easy, so there we go. So I just copied this line of code, and instead of echoing out age here, I'm actually just going to echo out age without quotes. Okay. Don't worry about this yet, like setting these up. We haven't really talked about that yet, but I just want to show you the difference between a constant and a variable. Okay. So if I refresh now, it says Cindy is 4 years old, and then it says Cindy is 54 years old. Let's try to change a constant. So if I do age is equal, and then we just set it to something else like 45 instead of 54, we should get an error on the screen. See, unexpected equals on line 15. It's because you can't change a constant. Even if we try to redefine it, I don't think that'll work. So we can try it, and maybe I'm wrong. But you shouldn't be able to change these. So now if I want to say 45, refresh, and then, okay, so it gave us a notice, and it didn't actually do it because you see it says Cindy is 54 years old, but it gives us this notice up here, and it says constant age is already defined on line 15. So we go back to line 15, it's not going to let us redefine that because a constant cannot change. So you don't need to know how to create constants yet or anything like that. They're super easy. They're pretty much like variables, except for you can't change them. There are some uses for them, but we'll get to that later. I just wanted to kind of illustrate the difference between a variable and a constant in contrast to one another, in case you've heard what a constant. So variables, two things. You can store things in a variable, which puts it in memory. You can access it later by using it inside PHP tags later. And also it can change, so your script can manipulate, it can do things with it and change it, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and put a comment above here, and I'm going to put variables can change, uncomment next line to change Cindy's age, okay? And we'll just comment this out. So now it should say that she's 24 years old again. Cindy is 24. We come here, we uncomment it, go back, Cindy is 4, okay? So I'm going to leave that in there so that you guys can be reminded of this. So I think that covers variables, and if you don't quite understand them yet, re-watch this, go through it, practice with them some. Make sure you're typing along with me, guys, or pausing the video and then type it out. Do it for yourself. Don't just watch. You'll learn better if you do it yourself. But let's go ahead and set up our on our website that we're building, our reference site. Go back to the home page, so go to PHP. We're going to add our next menu item called variables, and we'll add it right in there. So go ahead down to menu.php, and we'll copy this bottom li, paste it right underneath there, and change echo to variables.php, and right here change pages to /variables.php, and right there change echo to variables. Okay, then we actually need to set up the page. So inside the pages directory, right click on template and go ahead and duplicate that and call it variables.php. And then what we'll do is at the top with header, change that to variables. For a description, maybe we'll put something like variables allow you to store data into memory. Variables can change and be manipulated. Okay, now we need to get the right URL for this, so just go ahead and jump into a browser, open up a tab, and just go to php.net, and in the search bar type in variables, and it's going to open up this variable page here. So we'll go to basics like this, and we'll copy that URL, go back to our source code, and we're going to replace right here in this href that with our new URL for that PHP manual. And then right here in a code label, we just need to change that to variables.php. Line 9, change scripts to scripts/variables.php. And in the results, you'll also change echo to variables.php. Notes, This is where you're going to put some of your own notes to remember things by, right there. Okay. Whoops, I accidentally deleted that. So yeah, you'll put some notes here. Okay, I'll let you put it into your own words because I think that'll be helpful. And then put the video embed code for this video you're watching right now. Below the video, click on share, click on embed, and then copy the code and paste it right here. Okay? Alright, so if you've done that, if you go back to the site now and refresh, variables shows up in the menu, and if you click on it, it should show us variables, and if we click here, it'll take us to the variables in the PHP manual, which is good. So we can go back to that. It'll show us our file here. This is our PHP file, and then this is our results from this file. Here will be your notes that you're putting into your own words, and then here will be the video that you're watching now. So later you can come back and look at this. Now you can do the same thing as every day. If you don't remember, just go back, check out echo, check out variables, and you can see how we're starting to build upon one another. So in our variables, we're actually using the echo that we learned in the previous chapter. Well, I hope that helps, guys, and in the next video we're going to move right along, so I'm excited to see you guys there.